We're back. The exterminator just popped in to see if they needed any services, but luckily for them, they do not.
Yeah, we do not. We're completely pest-free over here. We don't need no exterminator.
Just for the record.
Yeah.
So that was Algeria. Talk about Moldova a little bit.
Yeah, so Moldova wasn't strictly speaking wasn't there on a tourism mission. I was there. I did volunteer work there for an organization that was providing services to Ukrainian refugees.
So you went by yourself, is that Rebecca?
I went by myself for 2 weeks, and I worked with an organization called Refugee Support UK.
Okay.
And UK organization, and they set up in different places around the world and just provide like practical services for refugees. So they had a big operation in Cyprus where they were serving migrants and refugees from Africa, Syria and Africa. And then they had a big operation. They started an operation in Moldova after Russia invaded Ukraine, because Moldova shares a long border with Ukraine, and it's quite close to Odessa.
Okay.
So a lot of Ukrainians left mostly Odessa to come to Moldova before and then after the invasion. I was moved by the crisis created by the Russian invasion, and I had the time and I had the resources, so I thought, why not go over there and pitch in. So that was a fascinating experience. That was what it was it was basically a store. I mean, it looked like a store. It was a store where you didn't need money to buy anything. Is what it was. In the capital city, Chisinau, and if you were a Ukrainian refugee, you could come to the store and like just take stuff.
Cooking supplies, food,
exactly,
clothing.
Yeah. Not clothing, but food and like kind of household goods, cleaning supplies and whatnot. Diapers was a big item.
Okay.
And the weird thing about the refugee situation in Moldova is that these Ukrainians who were living there, they are all people who had the means to leave their homes in Ukraine and come to Moldova, which really meant that most of them had cars, for example. Most of them were able to work remotely. In other words, they weren't that poorly off to begin with. They weren't very poor.
Were they renting apartments in Moldova?
So they were renting. Basically, they were renting apartments in Moldova, which was driving up the rental prices across Chisinau, which was pissing Moldovans off. They were driving up prices for a lot of things in Chisinau, which was pissing Moldovans off. And Moldova is a very poor country. I think it's the poorest country in Europe.
Former Soviet Republic?
Yeah, it was exactly. Yeah, former Soviet Republic.
Not in the EU, I'm guessing?
Not in the EU. The current president is like very Western facing, and she's trying to get the country to move towards the EU, but it's locked in this perennial battle, very much like Ukraine, between should they turn to the West or should they turn to Russia?
They probably have a lot of ethnic Russians in the country.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a fascinating place. It's a fascinating place, and it's also, there's a ton of tension there because they have they really have a lot of the same issues that Ukraine has. And there's a ton of fear / hope, depending on whether you're a Russian or an ethnic Moldovan, that Moldova's going to be Russia's next stop after they finish with Ukraine.
Was there any physical danger to you when you were there? There were no incursions, or there's no little green men. These sort of unacknowledged Russian troops coming in that happened in the Crimea and Ukraine before.
No.
Before the official war was sort of kicked off, there was, I think, a lot of covert shit going on. And
there's no question there's a ton of covert stuff going on in Moldova. I mean, there is absolutely no question.
But not like overt violence in the streets or stuff happening to. Well, I guess maybe you didn't feel like you were in any danger.
No, not at all. But there is Moldova's a strange country for a lot of reasons, and one reason is that when they gained, so Moldova is it's been part of the Russian Empire. So even before the Soviets, it was like, well, going back even further, Moldovans are really kind of ethnically Romanian, is what they are. The language that they speak is Romanian. Like Romania and Moldova, they really should be the same. It's the same people.
Okay.
But for reasons that frankly escape me and I couldn't articulate, what is now Moldova was kind of roped into the Russian Empire in the maybe the 18th or the 19th century, and Romania was not. So that's the divide. But then, because of all the time that Moldova was in the Russian Empire and in the Soviet Union, there's lots of Russians who live there now, and then, there's also lots of Moldovans who speak Russian and kind of identify more with Russian culture than with Moldovan culture. So when the Soviet Union disintegrated, 1990, and all of these former Soviet republics became states, Moldova did, there was a group of people inside Moldova who did not want to be part of a Moldovan state. They wanted to. They were Russians. They were ethnically Russian. They didn't want to, be. They didn't want to be a minority in an ethnically Moldovan country. So they fought a brief but obviously awful civil war, and they established their own little state within Moldova. So it's not. I called it a state. It's not a state. It's not recognized by anybody except for Russia. It's called Transnistria. So it's this sliver. It's this sliver of land within what the entire world, except for Russia, recognizes as Moldova. But they're completely self-governing, and they don't have anything to do as a practical matter with the rest of Moldova, which is super weird.
So did you know any of this before you were there?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah? Yeah. Did you have an interest in Moldova before you were there, or were you there more to help the Ukrainians that you were hearing about in the news?
Yeah, I mean, I really was just moved to participate in some way in helping Ukrainians.
And how did you help? Did you work in the store?
Yeah, so I worked in the store. There's Ukrainian refugees all over Europe. There's a ton of them in Poland. There's a lot of them in Romania. And I just thought, well, I know there's a ton of them in Moldova, and I bet not that many people are going to Moldova to help them. So let's look for an opportunity there. And sure enough, I found this organization. So I worked in the store.
After the fact, glad that you had done it?
Oh yeah, it was hugely rewarding. Rewarding. I mean, I was I would restock the shelves. I would help people do their shopping. I would register people for it. They
were grateful.
Yeah, they were. Oh, but the thing that I haven't mentioned, but I just derailed myself a million times, is that because the Ukrainians were actually a lot better off than the native Moldovans, because Moldova is a really poor country. Ukraine is not, exactly the UAE of Europe, but Ukrainians, relatively speaking, are better off than Moldovans, and the Ukrainians who had fled to Moldova because of the war were probably better off than most Ukrainians because they had the means to do it. So there was this weird situation in Moldova where the refugees were largely better off than the native population, which is kind of strange, right?
Yeah.
You don't really see that too often. So,
but the people working in the store were mainly UK, like British people, and yourself, other Westerners.
Yeah, people working in the store were Westerners. There were a few Moldovan volunteers too. But they realized, this organization that I was working with, they realized fairly quickly that like it didn't make sense to just be serving Ukrainian refugees because the Moldovans really needed assistance. So they started, they expanded their operations to serve Moldovans as well.
Then they were getting priced out of goods and homes and things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
It's a really bad situation.
Huh. All right, so talk, if you will, about Iraq.
So I went to Iraq immediately after Moldova.
Okay.
I flew from Moldova. On Easter Sunday. Actually, I left Moldova, and I flew to Istanbul and then immediately to Iraq. So when I say Iraq, I went to Iraqi Kurdistan, which is a region. It's like a autonomous region of Iraq.
In the north, correct?
In the north, yeah.
There's literally like a dotted line on the map, right?
Yeah,
it's which you see with other autonomous regions in the world.
Yeah, Iraq is politically speaking, it's a strange place because there's like the federal Iraq, and which is like Baghdad, and it's mostly Arabs, and then the other part is Iraqi Kurdistan, which is largely Kurdish, although not only Kurdish. There's also Yazidis there, who you might remember from being genocided by ISIS, and there's Christians there. So the Iraqi Kurdistan is like it's in a lot of ways self-governing. There's no border between the two. In fact, I passed into federal Iraq just because there is no border and nobody really knows where.
Iraq claims this land as their sovereign territory. So.
Yeah, and it 100% is. Yeah, 100% is, and the Kurds don't really dispute that. The currency is the Iraqi dinar.
Okay. They vote or supposedly vote or whatever. They're governed by Iraqi laws.
That's an interesting question. In some senses, yes.
Yeah.
But and mostly not. Like, I don't think that they're for all practical purposes, really, they're totally autonomous.
Okay.
I mean, they have their own leaders.
Oh, do they?
I'm sure they have their own laws. It's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. But I'm sure they have their own, like, civil laws.
Okay.
Anyway, so it's a fascinating place. And
what drew you there?
It seemed like a really interesting place. It's relatively easy to travel to, which is always a really important concern for me.
You didn't fly into Baghdad?
No, so I flew directly into Erbil, which is in Iraqi Kurdistan.
That's sort of the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan?
It's, the
largest city?
There's two big cities, and each of them has an international airport, but the other international airport had recently been bombed, so it was out of commission. So I had to fly to Erbil. Now, who do you think bombed that other airport?
That's a good question, since we...
so this is just 2 years ago. It's just 2 years ago.
So I've been much... I've taken a big step back from watching the news. I watched the news closely until probably about 2016. I'm trying to think about our misadventures and when they ended. The Obama administration was doing the big pullback. I forget the term that they used. Drawdown of troops in Iraq, and that was, I think, in the second term that was still going on. The first big one was in the first Obama term, and I think in the second term, of course, Biden's term, there was the leaving of Afghanistan and the chaos involved in that. My sense is that when we were drawing down in Baghdad, that there was just a real fragile central government in we had sort of tried to strengthen their federal, I forget their name of the prime minister that we had. I remember L. Paul Bremer was this American official. I remember him because he wore Brooks Brothers suits with combat boots. And he was our man in Iraq.
Yeah, right. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time.
He was like he was the first guy, I think.
Yeah.
2004.
Yeah. I'm going all the way back then. And I forget the prime minister's name that we had kind of... but anyway, it was just this real fragile coalition that he had. Yeah. So I can't remember... So I'm trying to guess who would have bombed...
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I would think maybe it'd be somebody affiliated with ISIS or... No?
So the geopolitics of that region are like weird. But a lot of it, in that part of Iraq, a lot of the politics... are focused on the fact that the Kurdish people are spread out between Iraq, Iran, a little bit in Syria, and Turkey. So they don't have their own state. They're just a few of them in all these places. And there's been a nationalist movement to try to unite all the Kurdish people into a unified state for a long time, and it has focused on Turkey. So the Kurds in Iraq are in mostly southeastern Turkey, and they've been fighting a low level. I think they actually just put down their arms just like a couple of weeks ago. But since I think the 80s, they've been fighting like kind of a low level war of independence against the Turkish government in Turkey. And the Kurds in Iraq, there's a border there between Turkey and Iraqi Kurdistan. The Kurds in Iraq some of them have been helping those Turkish Kurds fight Turkey. So as a result of that, Turkey like regularly goes on bombing missions trying to attack Kurdish fighters who are fighting them in Turkey, but inside of Iraqi Kurdistan.
Yeah,
which is a super weird. It's a super
Iraq
weird
is supposedly. I think they don't love the fact that their border is being crossed, but they don't really care that the Kurds are being attacked. So they kind of don't know what to do.
Nobody knows what to do. It's super weird. It's super weird because, for one thing, Iraq is nominally a U.S. ally, and Turkey is not only a U.S. ally; it's a member of NATO.
Yeah. But
they're bombing Iraq.
Right.
It's super strange.
Yeah.
And then the Iraqi Kurdish government, they don't, and I think this is true too of the Iraqi Kurdish people. They don't really support the Turkish Kurds who are fighting the Turkish government. And like I said, I think this has all changed just in the last couple of weeks. I think the Turkish Kurds have decided to stop their armed struggle, but because they don't support the Turkish Kurds because they don't like their country getting bombed all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the Turkish, if I remember right, the Kurds were sort of American allies during
100%,
both of our campaigns.
Absolutely.
Maybe part of the Northern Alliance even. No, that was Afghanistan.
Yeah. But you're totally right, yeah.
In both Gulf Wars, if I remember right, they were anti-Hussein. Because he was quite brutal to the Kurds,
Absolutely.
if I remember right.
Yes, you're completely right.
So is this part of why you wanted to go to Iraq, is to see what was going on?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's just a fascinating
because of those
place.
Political sort of whatever intrigues or the various tensions. You wanted to see on the ground what it was like to be there.
Again, not really. I mean, that wasn't like a driving force for it. It certainly interested me. The idea of going to Iraq, I found like really interesting for the reasons that we were talking about earlier. I mean, there is a country that you just instantaneously identify with, like as a no-go zone.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I think I read like an article in the New York Times maybe a year before talking about this, an idea for a hiking trail across Iraqi Kurdistan, and I thought, what?
Like,
it seems a little incongruous.
The piece was like someone should establish a hiking trail.
Yes, people were working on it.
They were reporting about how there were Kurds working on this hiking trail.
Yeah, Kurds and foreigners that were like trying to establish this Iraqi Kurdish hiking trail. And I thought that's fascinating. I like hiking. I thought, man, that would be a really interesting hike to do. Yeah, and I traveled to Turkey in 1996, and I'd gone to the southeast, and I'd spent a fair amount of time there, and I was just like fascinated by
the southeast of Turkey.
People. Yeah, so
which
like
is
the Kurdish
probably
area.
light years away from Istanbul in terms of culture and westernization and Western friendliness and that kind of stuff.
Well, not
or internationally, international tour. It's not an international tourist destination, is my guess.
In 1996, it wasn't. Today, there's a really important archaeological site there, so I think it's drawing people. But Turkey's a really interesting country because it's super diverse. Like it's like this kind of rectangle, right?
Yeah.
And it's super diverse, going from west to east. It's like the changes are really dramatic. So
from more international to strictly Muslim Arab.
Yeah, so like the western part, I mean, Istanbul is on the close to the extreme western edge, and like you feel like you're in Europe,
right? Famously, the sort of division between Asian and Europe, I mean,
right?
Across
Exactly.
the strait, essentially, right?
Exactly. And then if you're in the southeastern corner. Well, first of all, there's a lot of Kurds, and then in the southeastern corner of Turkey, there's Arabs.
Okay.
So it's totally different. It's a really interesting place. So yeah, for all those reasons, I wanted to do this hike. Really, I thought that would be fascinating. It turns out that this trans-Kurdish hike. Turns out there is no trail. Like it's a work in progress, and there's no real trail. But I contacted...
There's just hillsides that you're walking through?
Well,
or small mountains or foothills or something?
There's but there are like sections of trail. But again, it's not, it's not like a trail in the Adirondacks or something like that. There's ways between villages that people know.
Okay.
Is that a trail? Maybe. So I reached out to a local guide, an Iraqi Kurdish guide, and I told him what I wanted to do, and I just thought there must be guides who hike this trail and will take me on this trail, but it turns out that there is no trail, so there are no guides who lead the hikes on the trail. But this guy who I spoke to, he's an outdoorsy guy who takes people around Iraqi Kurdistan, and I pitched the idea to him, and he was like, "That sounds like fun. Yeah, I'll organize that." So he put a ton of work into it, and he organized. I think it was like a 6-night hike. So me and him, village to village, along this kind of trail, or what was supposed to be the trail. But for every section of the trail, he had to hire a local guide who knew the way. And not only who knew the way, but who knew where not to go, because the region is hugely mined. There's just mines all over the place, and you'd have to be nuts to just go out walking in the fields. Locals know what paths are safe, and you also have to know where the Turkish fighters, the Kurdish fighters are. The PKK, they're called. So the locals know where the PKK hangouts are, and you want to avoid those because they get bombed by the Turks. So that's what we did. That for 6 days, and we stayed with Kurdish people in their houses in these villages.
In their homes?
Yeah, it was amazing.
So that's part of the deal when you hire this guy. The part of the tour is that he walks with you the whole time, and he arranges these local guides for each, and then he also arranges a stay in somebody's home.
Yeah, generally in the guide's home.
Of the guy that's walked you along the trail, and then you're gonna his kids live there. His wife is there.
Yeah,
and you're just there a friendly uncle come to stay the night.
Yeah, Yeah.
And they cooked a meal for you?
Did they ever? Oh my God, the food was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we did. It was fascinating.
Did you get the sense like they got people coming in there every weekend? Or
not at all. No, I mean, like I said, it wasn't. This guy the guy who I hired. He had to like cobble this together because it's just not a thing. He thought
barely got a little business going that he's trying to get going or something, or just it's a side hustle for him or something.
No, the guy I hired. He's like a bona fide tourist guide in Iraqi Kurdistan, and he likes hiking, and he takes people on some hikes. But the idea of hiking this trans-Kurdish trail, he had never done that before. He never hiked. He'd hiked little parts of it, but not with paying customers. So he had to cobble.
You were the first person that he took on this?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of the first people to hike any stretch of this trans-Kurdish trail. One of the first like tourists to do it.
So these people were you were probably sort of a novelty to have in their home cooking.
Oh yeah.
So they're being very, hospitable and generous.
Totally.
But the sort of what you sort of almost come to expect in the developing world, it seems like.
Well,
from what I've heard,
Yeah, I mean, all over people are very nice.
Yeah,
for sure, all over people.
When they're hosting, especially when they are hosting, and if they don't do this every day, this is something new for them. So, as you maybe would do if for some whatever strange reason, somebody was coming through Brooklyn and you were hosting them, and you never, they were from some region that you'd never seen before, like. You'd go out of your way to be a little bit more hospitable.
Yeah, I mean, if we lived in a place where it was unusual to have visitors from abroad, and also if there was no other place for them to sleep, we would all open our doors.
Sure,
people are just nice and warm.
Sure.
So
you had great meals.
The meals were so good. It was just tons of fun. It was awesome.
And it was people being friendly, and what you're drinking the local alcohol or whatever.
There's no alcohol. There is
because they're all Muslim.
Yeah.
So there's none of that tea or whatever you're having after dinner and chatting amicably. Or
lots
whatever.
of tea. Tons of tea.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of tea. That's basically what they drink. Just nonstop tea.
Morocco was like that too. They had a ton of tea. And so that was, you were also really glad you did that?
That was an unbelievable experience.
Did you feel the stress of living in such a place where you had to, watch out for landmines and for, the local military outposts?
Yeah, so there were a couple of weird experiences there. So in one place we were hiking near a village. It was actually near an old Jewish village. So there were a lot of Iraqi Jews. Up until the 50s, there was a sizable Jewish community in Iraq, and we were near one of these villages. There haven't been Jews living there since the 50s, and the village was in ruins. And there were other ruins nearby. And we were walking down the road, and we got stopped by these two cops, security guys of some kind with AK-47s, and they detained us for like an hour and searched all of my stuff.
Even though you were with two local Kurds?
Yeah.
These Kurdish cops stopped you guys for an hour.
Somebody had called them and said that there was like somebody suspicious hiking around the area.
They saw a white guy maybe thinking you were British or American, CIA or...
Who knows? They thought it was
intelligence of some type.
So there was that, and then I was on a hike.
Were they aggressive?
They were perfectly nice.
They weren't trying to be intimidating.
Not at all. But they did have guns on them.
Yeah.
So
large guns.
That doesn't feel great.
Right.
But so another time I was on this hiking village to village. And our local guide was telling me this incredibly moving story about when he was fighting ISIS. Which is a lot of the guides who, there were only like 5 of them or something, but the guides who took us from village to village, several of these dudes were active in the Peshmerga, which is the Kurdish military force. And a lot of men in Kurdistan are like members of the Peshmerga Reserve, and these guys, they fought ISIS on the front lines. Like more than anybody, these dudes fought ISIS to keep them out of Iraqi Kurdistan as best they could. So this guy was telling me like a story about fighting ISIS and when they attacked an ISIS outpost, and I was like completely riveted. It was just a absolutely nutty story. And while he was telling us this story, and we're hiking down this beautiful mountain, we heard an explosion in the distance, but like it's super quiet, and then you hear this like unmistakable sound of an explosion. Yeah, and we all stopped. And the guide who was telling the story said, "That's a Turkish airstrike." And I was like, "Oh my god,
that's fucked up."
What do we do here?
At a military, like on a military outpost somewhere,
presumably on a PKK camp somewhere.
And this is just for decades been ongoing.
It seems to happen. Yeah, it happens like on a daily basis. It's crazy.
Was there like a sort of, a shudder or sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, panic?
We all stopped when we heard it, and the guide who had the military experience, he like became hyper alert all of a sudden. He went
into like training mode, kind of, like mode that he's been trained for, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, he like just was hyper alert, he was listening, and, you could just tell like this was not unusual. I've never like heard an airstrike before. Yeah. So for me it was jarring.
Yeah, of course.
But for him he was more like, okay, let's just wait and see what happens here. It was far away. I mean, we just heard it, we didn't see it even. Yeah. And then we just kept walking after that. But a pretty weird experience.
Yeah. So that was Iraq. Let's finish up with Tanzania. Tanzania?